Where a lot of this classical thinking and all this lot came, that there are examples of Tudor buildings with classical features on them, classical columns and pediments. And they're right stuck on mishmash of a... And the reason was that Henry VIII had fallen out with Rome, and as the Renaissance was kicking off in Italy, it kicked off 100 years before it did over here, we couldn't get access to it. So we got the pattern books brought up through Northern Europe, and they looked at these pattern books and thought, oh, we like that bit, we'll stick that bit on there, and we'll stick that bit on there. They didn't know how it all worked as a whole, and how all the rules linked all the different elements of architecture together. So there are examples of Tudor buildings with classical elements just stuck on them randomly. It's all interesting because what they tried to do, everybody will have seen good old Vitruvian Man where he stood here with his arms up here, his legs down here, and there's a circle and the square. And what he's trying to do is make human proportions, because we like humanity in architecture and we think it all should go together. It doesn't work really. They were striving to unify everything together. It's a bit like Einstein's theory, where it's one very simple thing that fetches everything together in harmony, or chasing the God particle, the Higgs boson or whatever. They were trying to unite humanity with the universe and all the proportions that existed in it. And there really were some, when you look at them, quite odd and convoluted drawings trying to make it work. And Le Corbusier did some, and these are even more, I should have brought some examples of like modern man fitting into modern architecture. Well, no, you've made the drawing fit the other drawing, that's what you've done. But at least they were looking and they were searching. This inquiry into the picturesque, the beautiful and the sublime, which was Edmund Burke and some other people, they actually started asking the question. This was in the 1700s. Why is something more beautiful than another thing? And it's a very fundamental question, but it's a very difficult one to answer. There was an architect called Alberti, and he more or less got there. He said, I forget his exact words, that something's exactly right when you can't add any more to it being a detriment, or take anything away and it being a detriment. And at that point, it's correct. But at least there was massive inquiry into beauty and why things look better, why one thing looks better than another. And since then, I don't think anybody's bothered with that question. You know, yeah.
Can you tell us how you got into signwriting and what do you currently do?
Right. I did 2 years at Percival Whitley Art College doing graphic design. And it was excellent because it taught you typography, screen printing, life drawing, what else did we do? Ceramics, everything for 2 years. And then I just sort of like got a job, got a load of money, got made redundant at 25, tried to get an apprenticeship in signwriting, so I thought, I'm a graphic designer, I can be a signwriter. So they did a crash course at Sheffield, and then it turned out to be a lot harder than I thought. So I did a 1 year crash course in signwriting, which was a 2 year course, but because I'd done 1 year up there, they allowed me to do it in 1 year. And then after 1 year's training, I went self-employed. And then I woke up about 5 years later and thought, oh, I'm a signwriter now. Having signwritten a rugby stadium roof, and you used to just say, somebody would bring you a job, you'd never done it before, and you just think, right, I'll have to do it. Then I started studying wood graining and marbling in the Victorian context, not in changing rooms, which is imitating all types of woods and marbles. So you have to know about the geology of how the marbles are formed. You have to know about the different tree species, how the wood's cut, so you get different grains out of the timber. So I spent 3 years every Monday night driving to Sheffield College and back to learn that. So I've currently just set up a school in Manchester to teach traditional signwriting, graining, marbling, gold leaf work. There are a couple of schools, there are 3 schools at least in London now, teaching traditional signwriting, which is great. Because it's got to the point where everybody's fed up of vinyl lettering. I could walk around Halifax 20 years ago, maybe a bit longer, and told you who's done which sign, just by looking at it, which signwriter had done it. They all had their palette of colours that they liked, they had their own individual style, and a lot of that's gone out of it. The other problem with vinyl lettering was it gave access to signs to people who'd no training in lettering. So anybody with a bit of redundancy money went out and bought a vinyl plotter and started sticking vinyl lettering everywhere. Whereas you had somebody who originally would have been a signwriter, did it because they wanted to do it and had a passion for the learning and did it that way. It's a bit like going back to, going from keg beers, everybody's going back to real ale. It's a bit of that. People want a bit of individuality. They want to employ a craftsman rather than a machine. In fairness, what you can do with vinyl lettering, and I know somebody who's good with it, and the creative in the design and the use of it, but it's gone beyond vinyl lettering now. It's gone to digital printing, where it's printed on one piece of vinyl and you stick the whole lot on. But to me, it just looks like you're flicking through a magazine. It all has the same texture. It all has the same look to it. To me, it's a bit sterile.
I think you're right, but I've only just realised that.
Yeah.
You see, if you don't think about it, it just doesn't affect you, does it?
No, and it's not what it's cracked up to be. I mean, I could go into the technicalities of vinyl lettering and why it doesn't last and everything, but that's drifting off into a whole different subject. Has anybody got any more thoughts on stonemasonry or letter spacing or...
If you were to put stone carving across there,
yeah.
Is there a mathematical formula to say, right, that's 4 foot wide, I'm putting in a dozen letters to make that fit on there, each letter needs to be 4 foot wide, needs to be 2 inches high.
Right. We used to get graphic designers coming to us, and one from when we got the sign company and we did the Coliseum nightclub the first time round. We did all the signs for that. They'd come in and there'd be a thing like that, and it'd go, and we'd get a drawing from the and be like that. And he's fit the letters on, and it's all in the company style and everything, all in the letter style, and he says, there it is, 8 before. And the first thing he goes, that's not 8 before. They'd draw the letters, then draw a box around it and put the measurements on, but it's obviously not 8 before, because 8 before is something like that in proportion. So you've got to start out with your proportion. Once you've got your proportion, you can basically put a diagonal through it. And then at any point, when you scale it up from whatever size, that diagonal line going through will increase or decrease the size for you. So there's quite a few what you can draw at a smaller scale on a piece of paper. And if it works at that, to scale it up, just put your diagonal straight through it, and it can be this big, and your proportions will pretty much fit it. But a lot of it is just trial and error. If I was to put, let's have a go at it.
Do you want to plan it out on paper before you get?
When I was signwriting all the time, it's a payoff. And you get good at it when you're doing it all the time. So I'd do it, I'd just go. And 9 times out of 10, I'd get it right. So the one time I didn't get it right, that's the payoff, because the 9 times I've saved time. And it's generally more benefit than getting it wrong. But there are tricks you can do with letter spacing to get round the problem. So if I was to go on here now, I'd probably start going just very roughly, get some idea. So that's not too bad. But it's only with a bit of experience that I can do that. It depends how accurate you want it.
Yeah.
But then I'd start and clean it up a bit.
All right.
But one of the tricks you can do, and this word doesn't lend it, yes it does, it's got two ends. If I'm finding that I'm a bit short at this end, and I've got to a letter N,
Yeah.
what I can do is make that letter N slightly bigger, so I've got a bit of gain there. And then I know that I've got another letter N coming up, so I can get gain again. But that means I can make those two letters the same, and I can get a little bit more gain here. Or if I'm a bit too much that way, I can just shrink them down ever so slightly. And provided you don't go too far off, you can work it out as you...
You C or you G maybe if you didn't have ends.
Yeah. I mean, the one way you've got to be careful, is when you've got two letters that are the same. You've got to be... Sorry, I've got it that wrong way around. If you've got two letters that are the same, you've got to be careful, because if you shorten one, you've got to shorten the other. It's if you have a letter that's different, you can sort of like expand it and contract it a bit. So as I'm going on here, I can start and look at my letters, and provided you don't do it more than 10%, nobody's going to know. For most sign work. If we're doing vehicle lettering, vehicles are very, very specific and everything has to be spot on. And when we did a vehicle, especially as it had two sides, it was worth investing the time in doing the tracing, because you could use it twice once you've got it. It depended on the quality of the sign that people were wanting and how much money they wanted to spend. But to be honest, people used to call it cheating. It wasn't necessarily. The days when you got letter set, we'd just get whatever their name was, rub the letter set onto an acetate and put it on an overhead projector. The advantage of that is you can centre it up, you can make it as big as small as you want. The only problem was, due to the shape of the lens on an overhead projector, it used to do that with the lettering in exaggeration. It used to get wider. So what you had to do was to put two straight lines on it and then just optically adjust the lettering. But it could save you so much time. But letter set's a bit hard to come by now.